Hi everyone, Ann O'Connell with OC Publishing here, and welcome to the author journey. I always get my little dance on when I'm listening to that open. I hope that y'all enjoy it. We're so happy to see the sunshine here in the Great White North in Nova Scotia. And, things are even melting. So looking forward to hopefully spring around the corner. But today we have an author back who we had on, I think it was not last year, but the year before. But boy, she's been writing like a fiend, and wanted to get her back to talk about what she's working on now. We have Deanna Foster back with us today on the author journey, who has degrees in English, history, and education. She's also here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, where she went to Dalhousie University and Mount St. Vincent University, which is my alma mater. And she's been writing all her life. She loves adventures and travel to inspire more stories, all things fantastical and macabre, and Formula One racing. I wonder if she's ever been in a Formula One race. We'll have to ask her about that. She enjoys writing on cool winter days with epic music to keep her motivated. As I said, Deanna lives in Nova Scotia with her 2 boys and a pocket full of blood. This is the latest. It's nice and shiny, isn't it? Very, very enticing cover, I must say. It's her 8th book, and her upcoming book, Shadow's Grace, will be released this fall. So let's bring Deanna up to join us and tell us all about her author journey. Hi, Deanna.
Hello, thank you for having me, Jen.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. And you always just look so beautiful.
It's very sweet. It's the jewelry.
And that jewelry is absolutely stunning. Is that a one-of-a-kind piece? Looks like it.
Yes, it's by Arcane Angel. She's based in Dartmouth. She does work.
Arcane Angel. It is absolutely stunning. We'll have to look her up for sure. Arcane Angel. And you actually, it looks a little bit like Christmas at your place, like red and green.
I grew up in a house with forest green walls, and I always loved them. So I wanted to incorporate that in my own house when we built about 10 years ago. And red and black red's my color too. So always lean into red.
Oh my goodness. Well, and my home now looks a lot like the home I grew up in, because I inherited a lot of like the family home contents, which is wonderful. So welcome. We've got so much to unpack today, and congratulations. I know it has been a few months since A Pocket Full of Blood was published, and we chatted a bit at Booktoberfest, which seems like yesterday. But all of a sudden, it's almost March. How did things go at Booktoberfest for you?
Really well, actually. I had a successful day. Actually, the last book that we talked about, Will of the Magic Realm, was very popular with the young audience. Mm-hmm. And Christmas with a Bang was very popular too, with the adults in attendance.
And that was really good timing. Yeah. That's fantastic.
I think that book, I described that as a crossover between Hallmark meets Die Hard for Christmas stories.
Well, that's one I haven't read yet, so I'll have to check that one out. And I just wanted to, I'll bring, I know you don't have a website just yet, but I'm going to bring this little visual up here. You talked about Will of the Magic Realm, and that was what we had talked about the last time you were on, this one here. And we had it was a discussion about dragon stories, which was a lot of fun. So here's one of the things I want to talk about today with you, and I think might be really interesting for viewers, is your cross-genre writing. So, Will of the Magic Realm was middle grade. The one that I'm reading right now is like historical murder mystery. The one that hang on a second here, Postmortem, is contemporary paranormal, I think might be an appropriate way. So talk about where your ideas come from and how do you keep track of it all?
One of the things, whether for better or worse, that I do is cross-genre. And it's really because so much of my writing is inspired by the characters. And everything I do, every book I write, it always starts with a character. And just for an example, I was inspired last night. I was talking to my partner about something that I thought was kind of would be an amusing way to start a book. This is just came out of nowhere. I thought, what if there was a vampire who lost their fangs for some reason, and they had to go through the paper straw, and the paper straw kept disintegrating. So they're constantly having to throw the straws. I just thought it would be amusing and put a little dark humor into that. And so then I just sort of unraveled in my head, well, what do they do? They have to go find a dentist to hook them up with fangs until their fangs grow. And it spiraled from there into a story as to this vampire. It opens with the vampire needing a paper straw to drink out of people, which I thought was amusing. And so everything I write, always the characters always come first. And then setting, and very bottom of the list is a plot. And that's just the way it comes for me. And that's what I really love about character-based writing, is that for someone like me who is a pantser, as we call ourselves, we fly by the seat of our pants. We don't plot. Yes. And so pantsers, we just really go with the flow. And the characters really set the tone and set the flow. They let me know if it's going to be a comedy. There's always, except for Will of the Magic Realm,
Mhm.
there's always a romantic element within all of my books because I am a hopeless romantic. Always, I always want a little bit of romance. In Pocket Full of Blood, it is a minor part of the story, but I still have that little piece of it. And
Mhm.
same with Postmortem Management. It's a much smaller part of it. It's a very slow burn,
Mhm.
but there is just that little thread of romance that leads throughout. With cross genre, because I'm so character based, I really struggle with sticking to just one genre. And uh, I know a lot of authors and fan bases want you to be a fantasy author or a historical author, but that's never really worked for me. I don't fit inside a lot of boxes. And
Mhm.
even in my writing, when someone was attending an event where I was talking about Fortunes of Madness, which is the first book in the Pocket Full of Blood series, I said, it doesn't seem like any one genre. They told me that it seemed like a romance and a thriller and
Very.
mysticism all sort of wrapped into one. And I do that a lot. So my writing doesn't always fit into a box. And for example, Christmas with a Bang, that's a bit of a Harlequin romance, but it's also an action-packed thriller. So I bring in a little bit of everything because I find it a lot more fun to be doing that.
Okay. So do you think that you have chosen to follow the self-publishing route just because you want to have that freedom to
I
explore
think so.
multi-genre? Mhm.
And when I was trying to chase the traditional publishing route, a lot of the feedback I received was that it wasn't really within a niche market.
Mhm.
And self-publishing route just made it so much easier to uh, do what I want, have the fun that I want within the stories, and get the opportunity. So I'm not bound by a contract that says I have to write 3 historical thrillers
Mhm.
within 3 years. If I want to take a break from one, I can write something else and
Mhm.
have fun with something a little bit different, which I did last winter when I wrote my upcoming book, Shadows Grace. It's
Mhm.
another it's a contemporary book, but it's also a very gothic atmosphere. And it has a little bit of the characters from Postmortem Management. So one of the favorite characters that everyone loved in Postmortem was Dennis, also known as Death, and he was very popular. So he makes an appearance in Shadows Grace. He is Death. He is the one that the main characters are making a deal with. And one of the fun
Bring
things
him
about
up.
him, and he was just such a breakaway. When I tell people Dennis is making a comeback, I hear, "Oh yes, yes, can't wait to have more Dennis."
There
There
he
he is.
is.
Death is pretty good.
And who did that cover? Like, where do you get your
That
cover
was
designs done?
I get my cover designs by Get Covers. I
Hmm.
find them very economical and just they do a fantastic job, I find. I really
Hmm.
loved the cover they did for Christmas with a Bang. It
Hmm.
really captured the spirit of the book. And I like this one because even though they look like business people, which they are, the whole story is about
Hmm.
Scarlett, the main female character, is Death's assistant in an office building. There's still the shadow of what we think of as death behind them and the Grim Reaper. And he does appear a few times throughout the whole book. He's a very sharp, clean businessman. But then as the book unfolds and they're put into these more dangerous situations, you really get to see what we envision as death, as a master of shadows and magic.
And so was it what was her name? The woman?
Scarlet.
Scarlett. It was Scarlett the character that came to you, or was it Dennis?
It was Scarlet to start, and it's one of the few books that I've written where the whole book is from her point of view.
Okay.
It's not first person, but usually I switch back and forth with chapters
Hmm.
between the main male character and the main female character.
Hmm.
I really like to capture both points of view. With Scarlet, what I remember was I was just in my bedroom one day where I do a lot of my writing. I have a lovely desk that faces the window. And I thought, what would it be like if you were Death's assistant? And it just a lot of humor came to me because I like the humor in the darkness and I love to embrace the darkness. So it's about her trying, and it's a little bit very, very loosely based on my 5 years as an executive assistant at that point.
Of
But
course.
it's about her trying to just manage an office full of vampires and demons and muses and the dead and then the living, and everyone's coming to try to make a deal with death. And she's got to manage his calendar. What does that look like? Um, so it was a lot of fun, and I started writing it, and I got a chapter in, and I thought this seems kind of fun, and I read it to my late partner, and he said, "I really like that. That's funny." So I think when I was writing the whole novel, and I do write very quickly, but I
Mm,
think I maybe had 2 or 3 chapters planned out. When I get to about a third or the halfway mark, then I can start to see the ending. And I still got to get from that point to the ending. But
mhm.
I think A Pocket Full of Blood may be one of the very few books when I started writing where I had a rough idea of the ending when I started writing it.
Okay.
I have no idea where things are going to go.
Yeah. Your process is very similar to mine, and even if you have an idea, if the characters all of a sudden start taking you in a different direction, that's okay too, right?
Yes, and that's always a lot of fun, and I
Yep.
really enjoy when that happens, and I really do. A lot of people will ask me, "Do your characters take on a life of their own?" And I say, "Absolutely." And I love that about them. And one of the great reviews that I received about A Pocket Full of Blood was that my characters really do develop. And I
Mhm,
really liked that because they start out at the beginning of the book, and then by the end of the book, they're not the same person.
mhm.
And I was asked at the book launch, how do you know? Because I don't plot. How do you know when the book is done? How do you know when you've finished writing it? And my answer is usually when I've broken their hearts so much that when they are
Right.
utterly heartbroken,
And we
whether
need
it's going to be a happy ending or not,
right, right.
when their heart has been thoroughly ripped out, stomped on, and they can't take anymore.
Then we put them back, right? Well, and I mean the subject matter, well, in a lot of your books, is dark and thematically unsettling in some ways. And with A Pocket of Blood, it's a mass murderer, like who's on the loose, and so these kinds of things can't help but change a person, right?
Yes,
As you're
absolutely.
experiencing them, right?
Yes, and the main character in A Pocket, Vihan, the first book, Fortunes of Madness, was about Detective Fox and the tarot reader Rebecca. And
Mhm,
Detective Fox was sort of a seasoned detective, and he didn't want a partner. He didn't want anyone around. And then on the day the murders were found, Officer Vihan, his first night on the shift, so he's brand new to the agency, the police force, and he sort of latches on to Fox, and Fox takes him through the murder mystery, and they work very closely together. So when Pocket Full of Blood opens, it's been about a year since the big murders going on during Fortune. So Vihan's still very young, and he's still unseasoned, and the reason he gets involved with this case is because he's convinced that it's his brother who has escaped from Wolfbridge Asylum, who is
Right.
killing is the murderer, because the victims are found in a similar style to what his brother used to do to animals. And so right from the beginning, you start to feel this way on Vihan. And yes, these things do change. And A Pocket Full of Blood moves very fast. The whole book takes place over 3 days, but it's still enough. He's still within those 3 days. He experiences great betrayal and heartbreak, and a lot of family issues come out. And it's, even though it's only in a few days, and he also experiences love within that short amount of time. But it really does leave him changed at the end. He is not the same person. And life changes all of us. We are not the same people. I'm definitely not the same person at 41 as I was at 21. We are different. And that's one of the wonderful things, that you can continue to evolve, and life will change you, and whether good or bad. But that's what I really like about my characters, is that they do develop throughout the novel, and they do become someone different by the end.
That's fun. And I just want to give a shout out to folks who are watching, and Sue Slade has just joined us. Hi, Sue. And it's funny, she makes a comment here that leads me right into something that I was going to bring up anyway. And she said, you have a great first line in Pocket Full of Blood. And there was an event at Dartmouth Book Exchange the other night where I think Jane Doucette was giving examples of great first lines in novels. And I thought, well, let's just read out the first line that's in chapter 1, which is from Vian's point of view. And it says, Officer Vian shivered in the cool autumn air as he stood on the steps of the asylum. First lines, right? Thank you, Sue, for commenting on that, or asking us to do that, because I just thought that was wonderful. And of course, you know, when I was watching that video of Jane, the first thing I did was picked up my book and thought, my new one, right, which is coming out. I don't want to steal your thunder, but so my first line is, he snapped his flight bag shut, and she felt a jolt like paddles to her heart.
Oh, that's excellent.
That all right?
Spheric, yes. Yeah, with the first line with Pocket, I kind of knew where it was going, but I did envision Vihan on the steps of the asylum. That's how I saw that's how the book opened to me. And then from there, he leaves. He's find out that his brother's escaped from the asylum. His brother had never killed anybody up to that point. He had attempted a few attempted murders, and he had tortured animals, and he was in the asylum. And I use the term asylum just totally as a period, because it's set in sort of a Victorian era. And I've written and researched extensively on mental illness and the different institutions throughout the Western culture, Nova Scotia in particular. So it was a term that was used at the time. And that's the logic behind using those terms in the book. But also one of the main characters, and the series is going to continue with 2 other breakaway characters. One of them is Superintendent Dr. Aston Quill, and they're at a party, and the other breakaway character, Ella Gray, she's talking to him, and she said, I didn't know asylums were hospitals. And he goes on a bit of a tirade, which I do all the time, and say, yes, actually they were. And they were, you know, even in the 1800s, the superintendents were begging for more treatment and for begging to be treated equally as all the other hospitals. And I do feel very passionately about the history of mental illness. The history of medicine is something I absolutely love, but the history of mental illness is sort of my favorite area to go into. And I was very lucky. I was in New Orleans this time last year for my birthday. And one of the places we went to was they have a whole sort of history of medicine museum. It's 3 stories, and it's just amazing. So I was in heaven. And then we went to Vampire Cafe. It was a perfect.
And were you seriously taking notes?
It was cemeteries, history of medicine museum, and a vampire cafe. It was perfect.
And so why was it a vampire cafe? I'm almost afraid to ask.
I think because in New Orleans, they have that culture. They're known for. So there's 2 vampire places there. There's a pub and then there's an apothecary. And the apothecary was kind of new, so that's where we went. It was very small. It only had a few drinks and a few nibblies, but I liked that more because it was off the beaten path.
Mhm.
It didn't feel touristy at all. It felt very
Point.
authentic. So it was just lovely. It had baked brie, which is a favorite of mine. And you got to drink your drinks. And this was a bit touristy and campy, but out of a blood bag that said like vampire cap. I still have it.
With a straw, poke the straw
Yeah,
in.
yeah, we have to straw in. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
These books are very bloody. If you're overly squeamish, I wouldn't recommend, or I would skip through the parts, especially Pocket Full of Blood. There are a lot of gruesome murders. There is a scene where one of the people who has been hanged was quite a larger gentleman, and he's hanging from the rafters, and Isabella Gardner, the doctor, she's looking up, and then she hears creaking, and the body falls on her, and the bodies are all eyeless, and
that was a pretty gruesome scene. Yes.
And everyone is like, doctor, are you okay? And she said, well, I think I'll have some bruising. And they say, no, you just had a body fall on you. How do you feel?
I guess I'm not as squeamish as I thought I was, because I mean, although it's like, ew, that's gross. I mean, it hasn't scarred me, but it's a good thing. Yeah. So Stu Slade says there are a few eyeballs in the book as well.
Yes, the eyeballs. And I remember when I was getting ready for the book launch, I had these it was around Halloween, so I had these eyeball candies. And my kids were going for them. And I said, no, those are for the book launch. The eyeballs feature in my books. And my oldest said, well, don't eyeballs feature in every book? Doesn't every book have an eyeball? And yes, every book does.
He's very astute.
He is. Yes, that one will be.
Oh my
but he draws, he's very inspired like his mother when it comes to inspiration and stories and things like that. So it's a lot of fun seeing how he has grown. He'll be 13 next month. So it's,
wow.
Oh, I know. Yes. They're both
Wow. Time flies, right?
It does, yes.
So at what point will they be old enough to read your books other than Will of the Magic Realm?
Whenever they be read, I know they've heard about them. And I know William went to school and told people that Death's real name is Dennis. And no, it's just fiction. Just made it up.
Oh my goodness. That is so cute. That is so cute.
It is, yes. And
I'm
William
wondering,
was so delighted with Will of the Magic Realm. He took it to school and he always shows his teachers. He's quite proud of it.
That's so cute. So do you have, oh, hey, Lana Shoup is hopped on. Thanks for popping in. Do you have an excerpt that you would like to read?
I could try to read something quickly here. I got a fun, dark scene. Okay, so forgive me if I skip around a little bit with it. So in this scene, Dr. Gardner is in her laboratory and she is alone. And then Shakar comes, and there's still no confirmation whether or not he is the killer or not. But we do know that he is confirmed as having attempted to murder people, and he is known for removing the eyes of animals and possibly an eye of a human. They're looking through it. It's about 10 years old, and it's an old jar of formaldehyde. Yes, things get dark in autumn. So she's in her laboratory, and he comes in, and she's alone, and he binds her to the table. Because if she doesn't comply with him, he's threatened to harm her family, to go upstairs and kill her father. So she's just there with him, and she's bound to the table, and he goes into her place. He's looking for more jars and formaldehyde and blades, and he finds all of her autopsy tools. She does all the autopsies, so there's a lot of very sharp, long tools. And so she's chained up to the table, and Shakar approaches her. So Shakar placed the tip of the knife under her chin and applied pressure. Isabel gasped in pain and allowed him to guide her head up so her eyes met his. You have beautiful eyes, Dr. Gardner, he said. Oh, gods, Isabel cried, and the blade pierced her chin. Her bladder loosened and she squeezed her eyes shut. The blade was replaced by his hand, twisting her jaw. She cried out in pain. Look at me, he hissed. You don't have to do this, she whispered. Fox and Behan would help you. You could return to the asylum. It doesn't have to be the noose. You think there is a difference between the two? He asked. Shakar threaded 4 blades he had claimed through the belt of his jacket. What comes next? She asked. Once you finish your list. He turned his dark eyes on her. What makes you think it's my list? He asked. Isabel pursed her lips together and said nothing. Chloroform, he said. Where is it? Her heart rate tripled. No, you don't need to. Relax, doctor. He pulled out the hook, but not too much. Where is it? Isabel closed her eyes and told him. Shakar moved quickly, easily retrieving it because everything in her lab was organized and easy to find. He returned with 2 bottles and a cloth he had taken. Please no, Isabel said as he placed the supplies on the table next to her. You don't need to. We both know I do, he said, opening one of the bottles. A sob escaped her mouth. Please, no. I'm going to take this one with me, he said, lifting the full bottle. But I'm going to leave this one here. He poured the liquid onto the cloth, saturating it. That way, when they find you, they will know what to expect. The distinct scent of citrus and alcohol wafted from the cloth as he moved it to her face. Don't, please, she begged. Shh now, he said. No, she said. Shakar grabbed the back of her head and pressed the cloth against her face, covering her mouth and nose. The sweet taste of chloroform hit the back of her throat. Isabel held her breath and twisted her head against the pressure from his hands. You'll have to breathe, doctor, Shakar said, a trace of annoyance in his voice. His fingers dug into the back of her skull as she twisted and squirmed against the chemical. She hated that he was right. Her lungs burned, her body betraying her with the need for air. Don't breathe, she chanted, but eventually, as she knew it would, her mouth opened and sucked in a gulp. There, he said, easing his grip slightly from the back of her head. His other hand firmly clamped the cloth to her face. Isabel closed her eyes and took another breath. Tears ran down her face. She inhaled again. Her head lightened slightly. Inhale, her muscles slackened. Inhale, her grip on the restraints loosened and her hands fell softly to the side. Inhale, her pulse slowed. Isabel's mind screamed as the walls of the drug closed in, stealing her free will, leaving her at the mercy of the supposed killer. Her head lobbed to the side. She was weightless, vulnerable, and completely at his mercy. Mercy. She didn't think he knew the meaning of the word, but she would find out when she woke up, if she woke up. The darkness claimed her. And that's the end of that chapter. Sorry about that chapter. One of the fun things about writing what I write is that I do have to do a lot of really interesting Google searches. And chloroform does not take seconds like it does in the movies. You got to really have the pressure. You really have to breathe. It smells like oranges. And There's like a citrusy scent. And so you really have to breathe it in. It takes a few minutes, but when you're there next to your partner, Googling, how long does chloroform take to work? What kind of knives are these? When does the bodies, what are the stages of decomposition? When do we hit rigor mortis and when do we hit bloated and when do we hit gas? So there's all these interesting things. A lot of fun Google searches.
I was going to ask you, what's the most surprising thing that you ever found out?
Oh, from those different Google searches. Well, the chloroform one was pretty surprising. We're really conditioned to believe that if you pop it on someone's face, they're out instantly.
Immediate, just like that.
Immediate, yeah. The other things is just the various tools and bone saws, cartilage knives, all the fun sharp things you get to learn about. While when one of your main characters does all the autopsies for the police, other ones, and these ones were for other books, but just learning if someone dies in a modern day setting, a contemporary setting. Another thing I had started writing but didn't finish was a main character. There was a murder in her shop. And then, so what happens? So the police finish their investigation. What happens to the body? Does someone come and who cleans it up? Who cleans up all the blood? Who cleans up the crime scene, essentially? So just all those sorts of fun things. I say fun, but fun to me. All those interesting dark things that I get to search are always fun little rabbit holes to go down.
Yeah. And, so I'm obsessed, and I devour like all the crime shows and, the dramas and all of that kind of thing. And do you have a favorite, like Criminal Minds or
Uh,
Bones? Bones has always been one of my favorites.
Here's the thing with me that a lot of people are surprised to learn. When it comes to TV shows, because so much of what I read and write is really heavy. And the other thing I really love is comedy. And there's this great quote, I think Catherine O'Hara, the mom from Home Alone and Schitt's Creek,
Yeah,
she did an interview years and years ago when she was on SCTV. And she said, people don't take comedy seriously enough. And I liked that because I am a bit of a comedy snob when it comes to the shows. My all-time favorite show that I can watch 100 times, probably have, is Archer. And I love Archer. And I love animated comedy. They got to be smart. I like Rick and Morty. I like early Simpsons, early Futurama. I just found a new one, which actually is kind of murder mystery. Velma. There's an animated comedy of Velma that's pretty recent. So I just
from Scooby-Doo, Velma from
Scooby-Doo. Mindy Kaling is the voice of Velma.
I love it.
It's when it comes to things that I watch, everyone says, you should watch this and you should watch that. And I know, but does it have an animated asshole in it? I'm sort of but it's not. I did really love Only Murders in the Building. And I will put that out there because my partner, my late dear partner, Chris, and he loved murder mysteries. So he is someone, when I was writing Fortunes and writing Pocket, because he was so entrenched in murder mysteries and things, he helped a lot with those. So he loved those. I loved comedies. It was really the perfect pairing of a comedy and a murder mystery. So we really enjoyed those shows together.
Well, and it's Steve Martin and Martin Short.
Martin Short is just phenomenal in it.
Obviously, there's going to be some funny stuff in there, but well, it's amazing where all of our inspiration comes from. And like you said, Chris, your late husband, you still get inspiration from him, and the traveling. And so I love our chats, Deanna, and I can't believe we're already at time. And thank you so much for doing that reading for us. And keep us posted for when Shadow's Grace is coming out.
Yes, it's hopefully coming out this fall.
And like I said, if you want to learn more about Deanna, join her on Facebook, Deanna Foster Author, or on Blue Sky and Instagram. And of course, all of her books are on Amazon, like I just showed you. And again, thank you so much for coming back and catching us up with what you've been up to.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we'll have you back if you'll
come. Great. Definitely.
And thank you all for joining us this week on the Author Journey. I hope you're having a great week so far. And I encourage you to support indie authors, get out there, get to an indie bookstore, buy lots of books, and do reviews, because that's what makes authors very happy, is when they hear from readers. So for now, I'm Ann O'Connell with OC Publishing, and we'll see you next time on the Author Journey.